My name is John Larson from Tucson, Arizona. I'm an unemployed and disabled music teacher living with my third wife, stepson Michael and son Luke. I am a victim of CPS corruption, family and divorce court corruption, judicial and attorney misconduct, and law enforcement abuse, spanning a period of 31 years in 3 states, in Colorado, Arizona, and Texas. My victimization began with my first wife and child in 1981, Denver, Colorado. My first son suffered from baby formula intolerance, and the pediatrician, to cover up his own medical malpractice, contacted CPS. His name was David Kessel. Charged us with failure to thrive. We moved in with my parents to keep our baby to Alamosa, Colorado, and we were court-ordered to jump through many CPS hoops. After a year, we returned to Denver for the trial, which was canceled and charges dropped because the pediatrician wanted to be paid to testify. He had written down that this child was a product of 2 mentally retarded individuals. CPS added other false accusations to the reports. A year later, our second son was born, and early in the morning, CPS and police broke into our home with guns drawn. They ripped the baby out of my wife's hands and took both of our children. We went through court, and we had a good lawyer. He discounted all the evidence, but despite that, the judge ignored us and found for CPS. We moved down to Alamosa. Our third child was born, Jennifer. She also had baby formula intolerance and was deemed failure to thrive. Our fourth child, we never got to bring home from the hospital. This basically tore my wife up and just brought her over middle edge. At the same time, she was independently wealthy. Her foster family, foster mother and foster brother, had worked very closely with CPS and foster care, foster parenting. All they wanted her for was her money. Well, they forced her to divorce me, and at the same time deemed her mentally incompetent, got control of her money, and got control of my children. They adopted my children against my wishes and behind my back without my knowledge. Later on, I married my second wife. My second wife knew of all the hell that I'd been through with my first marriage. Near the end of our marriage, 8 years of marriage, that is, she had been influenced by a good friend, divorcee friend of hers, and also by her mother, that she could divorce me and tell all the lies and what have you, and live off of child support and live high off the hog. No problem. She took the children, divorced me. Her mother had moved in. Our fourth child was born, Timothy. Basically, the grandmother who had been an abuser, and my second wife was physically and sexually abused by her stepfather, her real father, her grandfather, cousins. Well, she was just sexually abused. They sexually abused my children, but they lied again, said that I threw the baby, I abused my kids. At that time, they fled to Tucson. I was laying flat on my back, going through spinal surgery, my second spinal surgery. Then they took the kids to Texas. I married my third wife, moved on. She had a baby, our son Luke, also my stepson Michael, and I got another stepson, Aaron. Right in the middle, we got a call from Texas, Metroplex Killing, that my son Jeremy needed to come up and live with me. He arrived in Tucson, Arizona. He was doped up on 3 different psychotropic medications. He was shaking, holding onto my hand, and just very scared. My wife had dumped him into group homes, dumped our other children into group homes when she couldn't handle them. They were upset, basically, that they'd been torn away from me. with the psychotropic drugs, he would have seizures. He would fall down and get bruised. He would go violent. We sent him for counseling, but this was CPS contracted counseling. We didn't know this. They would throw him into psychiatric hospitals again. One night, we couldn't get a hold of the counselors, and he was violent again. Police were called. He ended up in juvenile detention. With the bruises, they came back. They blamed it on my wife and I, even though it had been proven that we had been assaulted. On February 9th, 2002, police came in with CPS, barged through. I was sitting on the couch. I was grabbed by 3 policemen, Gardner, Widener, and Thompson. I was thrown down on the floor and kicked and stomped and beaten. My wife screamed. "He's got a rod and screws in his spine. He's had spinal surgery. Please don't do this." They hogtied me, handcuffed me, dragged me down 3 flights of stairs, slammed me to the cement below. By that time I was in shock and I was vomiting. I was rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, the cops were hovering over me. Officer Widener was going to arrest me, and I asked if I was under arrest. I said, "Well, are you going to read me my rights?" And he says, "No, they only do that on TV," and laughed. We fought for over a year to get my children back, Michael and my son Luke. They'd been traumatized over and over again. My other children were down in Texas. My son Jeremy, he was in prison. He was shipped back down to Texas, to Cedar Ridge at that time, and in foster care. While in foster care and in the group home, he was sodomized against his will and sexually abused and physically abused. He was shipped back up to Tucson. When I heard about all of this, I contacted CPS, asked them what's going on, and they cut off all communication I had with my son Jeremy. To cover this up, they slammed Jeremy, at that time age 12, with felony sexual assault. He never assaulted anyone. We still were fighting to get our children back. We jumped through all the hoops. Counseling, they kept insisting that there was domestic violence in the home, and my wife said, "There's no violence. We're happily married." But we had to go through domestic violence, counseling, parenting classes, all types of classes, anger management. And even thus, with the proof, they said, "Oh, you haven't completed the classes." I had to bring in proof. There were psychological evaluations that said everything from I have personality disorders, to I'm paranoid schizophrenic, to anger issues, violent, I'm a drug addict, I'm a sexual abuser. They accused me of abusing my daughter from my first marriage and my children. I never sexually abused any of my children or physically abused any of my children, but they kept doing that. One psychologist even said that my degrees, my BA in religion, vocal and instrumental music performance, my master's degree in music education was all a lie. I lied about it. That my IQ was totally low. All I could get possibly is an associate degree. Not true. I had to bring in my degrees to prove otherwise. I had to bring in prescription to prove that I was not a drug addict. They wanted me to do urine drops. We finally got our kids back. But still, with the divorce, my second wife finally ran off with the carnival and with another man. She'd been sleeping on me all the time with my second marriage. But she ran off. She dumped our children ran off with the carnival, left him with a friend. CPS got involved with that. They came back in and told us what had happened. And then I found out that my wife had filled out papers to terminate her parental rights. My wife Lori and I drove 2 days to Lampasas, Texas to fight for custody of my children, Jeremy, Kevin, Robert, and Timothy. The judge, Judge Van Dorden, it was basically a kangaroo court. The lawyer that was to represent us was representing CPS in a previous case before us, Pat Milliken. He could see that we had 2 happy little children with us. It didn't matter. It didn't matter we were happily married or anything, had a happy family. Also, my ex-mother-in-law was there. A sexual abuser, a physical abuser, didn't matter. That had been said in previous psychological evaluations. They ignored that. They gave custody of my son Timothy to my ex-mother-in-law, an abuser. Why? Because she could get extra Social Security, extra money, child support. At the same time, they double court ordered me to pay child support. So I was paying 2 times the normal child support through Texas, the state of Texas. We thought at that time, too, we were going to get to see our children. I went with our supposed lawyer that was representing us to CPS. The CPS worker said, no, you don't get to see your children. They're in another city in the state. My attorney made me sign papers for foster care. I said, no, I don't want to sign these. He said, you have to sign them. So I signed under duress. He and the CPS worker scratched out angrily and said, you're going to sign this or we're going to throw you in jail. Well, I certainly can't go to jail because I've got a wife and 2 kids out waiting for me in the car, and I'm 2 days away from home. So I went ahead and signed it. We went back home. Later to find out that, first of all, Jeremy had been in prison all this time on bogus sexual assault charges. They pulled the same thing on my son Robert in foster care, accused him of sexual assault. That never happened. Both of them, Robert and Jeremy, refused to be adopted, even though CPS wanted them to. Timothy was already adopted to my ex-mother-in-law. Kevin was adopted out to another family. A very angry young man right now. At this time, my son Jeremy is an adult, still has a sexual abuse charges. He's trying to clear his name. My son Robert has sexual abuse charges. He's an adult. And he's trying to clear his name as well. He is trying to work on a college degree. And CPS still has foster care of him. He's still in the program as an adult. Threatening him and saying, if you get out of our program, we're going to throw you in jail some more, and that you can't do without our money. They threatened my son Kevin the same way. You can't do without our money. My son Jeremy is in another place. I won't tell any of you where. He's studying Chinese medicine. They said the kid was a retard. Not smart. He's very smart. I'm proud of all my children. My children from my first marriage, John, James, Jennifer, Joseph. First of all, Joseph, I never caused your deafness. That was caused while you were in a foster home because they neglected you. They ignored your ear infections. If I was the only cause, it was genetics. I had the same ear infection problems. I'm sorry, son. That's the way it was. I know you've spoken to me, and you're angry, and certainly Bill and Marcia used parental alienation with all of you. It turned you against me. Everything that CPS said was true. And Ruth Savory and Bill and Marcia Savory. All it was true. They just wanted your mother for her money. And you, children, for the money. That's all they care about. Jeremy, Kevin, you're such an angry little boy. I love you, son, even though you're adopted. Jeremy, I'm so proud of you. You've gone through hell. All you've done great. Robert, keep studying. Don't be angry. Timothy, you were just a baby. I never really knew you, and I've only gotten to speak to you a couple times. I love you just as well. My son Michael and Luke, you've been put through hell. My wife Lori, you don't believe in divorce, but you stayed with me. And I thank you. I hold on right now to the only grandson that I've got a relationship with from my stepson who fought in the war in Iraq. And Aaron, I'm very, very proud of you for fighting for our freedom that's been forgotten, for our constitutional rights that's been forgotten. My grandson, AJ, I'm a proud grandpa. I don't get to see my other grandchildren, but I get to play with you. That means everything right now, and I hold on to that. And I thank God I hold on to my Christian faith. I know that there's so many other people around the United States that are victims of the same corruption. I've talked to a lot of you. And to this day, I fight for your rights too. And that's why I'm speaking today. Not only for my rights and my family and through the hell that they were put through by CPS, by the courts, by corrupt judges and attorneys. Thank God one of the attorneys, our lad Shunnison, has had his license to practice taken away. It caught up with him. The lies, the corruption. And I'm grateful for that. In the end, God's going to be the final judge to you, CPS, to all your constituents. You're the final judge. There's nothing we can do to you on this earth that's going to compare to what God will do. You remember that.